Welcome to Silicon Valley Product Management Association's January 2025 meeting. Today's speaker, David Beach, helps executive leaders be more effective in their AI journey from ideation to production. An accomplished leader passionate about leveraging the latest technology driving innovation and business growth, David has extensive experience in product design and a deep understanding of emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence and generative AI. He specializes in helping organizations create customer-centric solutions that deliver measurable impact. As a thought leader in the intersection of technology and product strategy, David's guided enterprise clients through complex challenges, fostering innovation while ensuring alignment with business goals. When not crafting the next big product strategy, he's mentoring the next generation of product managers and empowering teams to embrace the possibilities of AI-driven innovation. I'm really excited to hear David's thoughts on how Gen AI is transforming product design and optimizing user experience testing. So without further delay, here's David.
Remodeling houses. We're talking about spaceships being remodeled using generative AI. And this is quite a lot of things happening right now, and generative AI is really making impact. And there are some big players that we'll talk about today. And but in general, it seems like the world of product, and more specifically product design, is really being impacted and benefiting the innovation and the speed that AI can bring to its world. And if you look into generative AI, this is from IDC data, generative AI for designing and product designing, it's definitely accelerating. This is a recent market research that's been done. It's accelerating. That's going to happen in 2025 as we are going through it. So with this kind of brief history, I wanted to position the conversation that we are going to have today. It was very difficult for me to really frame it, but if we look into generative AI for product design, there's two ways. There's software products and hardware products. And I want to focus mostly on the software products because that's really what I do. And I'm going to be covering two topics, mostly generative AI for AI development. There's a lot of AI developments happening, how we can actually develop and expand AI itself through generative AI and AI-centric products. And then the second part is how we can use generative AI for generic software development. In general, any product that you want to use, even if doesn't have any AI component in it, it still can use AI to accelerate. On the hardware side, I'm going to provide some resources if anyone is interested in the hardware product. I put some things in the slide. One topic that I thought it was very interesting, and I brought a couple of slides with me, just in the digital twin, which is a very interesting field, and the market is rapidly growing just because of that acceleration of the value that generative AI can bring into the digital twin space. And I will share some market numbers and some examples of the tools that are being used today. And don't take it personal. I work a lot with AWS technology. I've worked with Amazon technology for the last 20 years of my career, also with Google and Microsoft, but mostly with Amazon. So some of the examples that I have, just because of that experience, are highly Amazon focused. But I know that there are other products also on the market, and I will mention. So try to be as neutral as I can be. These are the resources that I've put together for hardware production. If you're interested in using generative AI and see what's happening, NVIDIA Omniverse is a very, very interesting platform that you can try. Autodesk has a generative design space that you can use. And there are quite a few other resources. Siemens has a very interesting platform that you can definitely look into in terms of creating hardware and designing a product and accelerating that phase. So if the slides will be shared, I don't know if that's going to be shared. There's definitely that content for you to leverage. But I want to start a little bit more foundational, so we all have the same understanding of generative AI. What is generative AI today? The word that goes around. Really, generative AI is an AI that can produce original content on itself that is close enough that you can say, okay, this is a person did this. That's really what we call it, generative. And it is powered by foundation models. And I'm going to talk about foundation models very briefly that are often pre-trained and on large sets of data. And can be up to several 100 billion parameters that these models are being trained. And you can still take it and fine-tune it And it's very good for customizing the model to do specific tasks. And we'll talk about those tasks and how it can be done. And you can apply this to many use cases, depending on, if we're talking about text summarization, question answering. If you've used any of the common kind of Gen AI platforms today, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, they all do that kind of chatting experience, but there's a lot more. For me, that chat experience is really tip of the iceberg of what generative AI market and capability is today. And really, the outcome for all of us is really to reduce time and cost of development. That's really a main outcome. And comparing AI with generative AI, often that comparison comes in. AI would be the holistic way where essentially a system or a computer can essentially run certain tasks. Underneath that, we have machine learning. And underneath that, we have deep learning where we can do more. And I will show the differences between these. And within deep learning, we have that generative function where we have foundation models and specifically trained foundation models on some topics. We call them large language models, or LLMs. So what is the difference between a normal AI and a generative AI? So machine learning relies on statistical analysis where you take specific input, very simple input, and you often give a specific simple output, and maybe most often a value, and that becomes a machine learning model. As we make this more complex, we're going to deep learning and neural networks. We can get more complex input and still provide a simple output. Let's say we can give it this is an image. What is an image? Is it a cat or not? And then that deep learning would be able to distinguish that. As we go into foundation models, we can take very complex input and provide more complex output, but also to generate new content as the model creates new content coming up. What is it good for? Two types of activities: content creation and natural language interactions with people. And content creation, text, images, code, very common. Since generative AI started in 2023, I personally have not written code myself anymore. I constantly go to my agents to do many tasks. And natural language interactions, there's chatbots we've used. Text summarization, document summarization is very effective. One of the things that I've seen some people do in the business world is really taking a financial statement of a large company and providing insights from that. This would take weeks in the past. Without generative AI, it's so fast to do it right now. Automating tasks, streamlining, and more importantly, knowledge search. Knowledge search is very important, and enterprises have always had problem in providing the right amount of the right type of, I would say, content for employees and partners and customers. Knowledge search is changing so fast. And now work for Amazon, and if you have used the Amazon.com, the retail site, they're using this heavily to provide the right product for the consumers. So to kind of summarize this, we have terabytes of data that train foundation models that we can use from any of the providers to do text to text, text to image, and text to audio or video. And choosing the right foundation model here becomes very important. There's so many of them out there. When we want to create an AI-centric product, it's very important to know which one you want to go now with. And if you go to Amazon Bedrock, Google Vertex, there's a model garden. There's a whole vast variety of foundation models that you can use. And there are three metrics that we always look into: speed, precision, and cost. So no foundation model, no two foundation models you can find that you would say, okay, they're about the same. So it's really important to know your priorities. And in this example that I want to present, let's say we want to have a foundation model that low cost. It can be very costly if you want to find a very, very highly customized foundation model. It has to be low cost, and it has to be okay precision. The speed is not important because the application that you're building or the product that you're designing doesn't need that high of a speed. So in that case, if I look into the cost, of course, LLM2 is a good model because it has a lower cost, but also in terms of precision, it has the medium precision. So for that specific use case, that specific LLM becomes the target candidate to leverage for a specific AI product that you're designing. Now I wanted to go, this is actually going into the a little bit of a quick overview because I've talked about the product and it's important to know where to get these. And I don't know if there's been anyone who has used the Amazon kind of or AWS generative AI portfolio, but that's what I use heavily, and I think it's a very good way to get started. And if you're using it already, expand. Oh, okay. So that's
Yeah,
probably
I've
coming.
got, I also have the first two questions on tap as well if we want to.
Yeah. Can we review that?
Yeah, so we'll run this one first here and see what people come back with. We've got about a third of the folks have answered so far, so
Okay, mostly they've not. Okay.
50%. Keep going, folks. You're almost there. We're at the halfway point. We'll give it another 10 seconds or so. If you're not seeing the poll, look around because sometimes the windows pop into different spots. All right. So I'm going to count down. I'm going to go through here 10, 9, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, going to close this poll off here.
Mostly they've
Oh,
not.
I need to share the results here so you can see.
Yeah, so 76% they've not, 19% they have, or 10% the company has.
Yeah, and this is you can answer more than one checkbox. So I let people answer whether they had their company. They could also check their company has as well. So those you can check more than one box. I should have mentioned that before. So let's rewind back and relaunch the first poll. We'll bring this back here and go back to question 1 and 2. So same set of kind of same format here. You can check more than one box, although obviously if you check that you have not and your company has not, then you probably wouldn't check the first two. Uh, and so if you get a chance to just mention whether you've used Gen AI, whether your company has, and then whether you used it for product design and deployment is the second question. The first question is whether you used it for productivity purposes. And we're getting a pretty rapid response here. I've got a number of folks. We've got almost 70% of you have answered. So just give this a little bit more time here. Approaching the 3/4 mark. See if hurry up if you haven't gotten to the window yet, and we're almost there. All right, so that's 1 minute mark. So I think we'll close this off here and report what we've got.
Okay, that's good. So that's actually very standard. So 76% they have used Gen AI to improve productivity. It's very common these days, to use any kind of chat agents that's out there. Many of them are for a certain number of prompts. You can use it per day at no cost, so it really helps. And to improve product, that's also pretty standard. When you can see there's a quite of a mix of responses on an average. Some have, some 50%, I would say they have. So that really helps me to understand how to guide the conversation. Okay, this is good. Should I remove this from the screen?
No, I can pop it back. So there
Okay,
you go.
I'll close it on my side at least.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is very typical. Now I'm talking about obviously what I have experience with, but if you go through many of the vendors that are out there, it's very standard. So in a Gen AI stack, typically you have fine tuners and providers, people who are building the foundations, and they often work at the infrastructure layer. They work at the chip, the silicon kind of chip. They want the best chips from NVIDIA, from other providers that are out there to provide faster processing, and they need access to that. So Trainium, Inferentia, these are really good kind of, so to say, chips that you can use, and I know I used actually Google's tensor processing unit. That's also very powerful. The same type of model that you have, essentially you're on the machine, you're building your application from top and building foundation models at this point, which is not many companies can do that, but and not many individuals can do that. You need to know foundation FM ops and LLM ops, and but if the product that's being built for AI is long term, you want to think about that because you want to have control on how you build your models. As you go in the middle tier, those are mostly consumers, but also some developers. You have more or less built-in LLMs that you can actually use. You can pretty much go there, run it, and take it from there, fine tune it. You can add some capabilities that you want. And so Bedrock's the same thing. Google's Vertex AI is the same type of environment where it actually gives you the ability to very fast come to pretty much using Bedrock and AWS Amplify. I built an application in like 3 hours or something, just from Backbone. So it really helps to really accelerate that adoption and go through that rapid prototyping that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And as you go through the top layer of that, you come into mostly Amazon Q, and there's also some comparable products out there, and that goes into finished product. You don't have, it's kind of like IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS in cloud if you're familiar with that. And if you don't want to spend time building AI and dealing with AI, like let's say if you want to just extract insights from numbers, Amazon, the Q quick site, that's a perfect place to start. Q for business, that's a perfect place to start. And Q developer for developer and code generation that I'll be talking about in a little bit. Just a familiarity as far as the kind of terminology that I may use at some point, most of it comes from this stack. And recently, there's also very powerful foundation models that came to the market at reInvent. That provides very wide range of work. You can create text, images, and videos that I'm going to show some examples that I did for this presentation. And all of it goes into content understanding. So if you go into the content understanding, if you want to start building that, depending on your use case and what you want to do, there's cost involved in this. So if the product involves only text, you really don't need to kind of blow the ocean. But as you go into image and video understanding, go into actually creating more interactive content, there's different types of LLMs that's available to you. Nova Real is what I was trying this week, which is very powerful. And this is some of the things that I was doing. Like let's say I wanted to ask just a dinosaur sitting in a teacup. You can create very innovative content. But also my son was more interested in a T-Rex walking in a jungle and playing with his cars, which was, I didn't know what would come out, but that's essentially the outcome, this is literally the output of a large language model, very powerful things that you can essentially build. And this is obviously a more gamified experience because I was playing with my son, but there's definitely a lot more product marketing positioning. I actually created a product marketing video for a customer, which is they were very impressed. Just clearly out of the box, so very fast acceleration. Just that product marketing video that we created for a specific type of smart glasses that they were working on. It would have taken them months to actually create this, really, and it was really one day. So as we go into AI, I don't want to go too much into the put doubts in you, but there's obviously some concerns out there. It goes into hallucinations of AI that. Training and fine-tuning in AI becomes very important, and the type of foundation models that you use, some of the metrics, authenticity, security is a very major concern. And if I want to talk about just the security, it could be a few hours of conversation, so I won't talk about that, but there's definitely something to think about. And accountability, trust, ethics is important as we go into these domains. Environmental impact is something that obviously AI is heavily involved and also impacting. Some companies are trying to actually measure the carbon footprint, but trying to automate things and making things faster and more effective. What a typical application that uses generative AI look like? There is no standard model, I would say, but really, if you look at it, the center of that is really that engine of the large language model that you use. and the ecosystem of the application that you use goes into the agents that you use, the kind of fine-tuning data. If you, for instance, when I use on AWS, I typically use Athena databases. All the data goes in there from S3, and it's integrated. It's directly integrated, so you don't actually have to do anything. The model is going into the database and learning everything within minutes. It's surprising how fast it is, and coming up with more complex content. And everything is integrated with typical things that you would have depending on the product that you're designing. If you have hardware involved, IoT, analytics, databases, all of that. So, and on the other side, users are sitting, interacting with this environment. So from their perspective, you have the front end that the user is interacting, but within the core of the application, many things are happening within the provider that you use, and more. So where does this take us? Yeah, so we talked about a little bit product. If we look into, so I've been doing AI around 2014. I started kind of getting deep into AI, and at this time, it was very, very narrow use cases. You could create just a chatbot. You could create just very, very specific. And as it has gone, you're creating this widening effect. You have more large language models that can do multiple things. It can create a video, can create response to your text, can also, as you might know, can also compose music, and very complex stuff. So what's going to be the future is the widening AI. This is what's expected for generative AI's impact to be in much, much more areas that we have today, and the life-changing impact that it has, and it makes our job essentially. I look at it from my perspective that constantly learn and improve our abilities to impact in the AI, because this is going to impact our world. And when we go into designing specifically a specific product, we've talked about a few things. The key activities, I talked about the responsibility and strategy and roadmap. But what goes into the data that actually creates that helps to create that AI solution or a product that you're designing? Text, audio, videos, images, and structures. These are the things that input comes in, and depending on the solution. And actually, the full deck on this actually shows a very different product, but I just wanted to emphasize generative product design, which is the topic of conversation. But before we go there, obviously the industry use cases, productivity, and the business case. At the end of the day, it's important to sell that business case internally or for the business that you own. And let's say, for instance, for the generative product design, the things that we have to take into account: text, audio, images. And if you go into software design, coding becomes very important. Coding is an area that is going to be impacted heavily, is already impacted heavily. And I think it was an recent interview this week or last week with Mark Zuckerberg, that he said the future of coding will be pretty much AI agents doing it. And I think it was Jensen from NVIDIA said that IT will be the HR for AI or something like this, and during the CES. These are the things that's happening, and very exciting at the same time, but also creates this environment where we need to be aware. Now I want to dive into the second piece of the presentation, which is only for software development. And that was the question that I had: have you used any generative AI for, let me put it on the side, software development?
So I don't know if this is the correct question here. This is showing up as
I think it was from the previous one.
that might have gotten rewritten over. So this short answer, I believe, was if you look at the question on the screen, it's who is involved with product design for software development. So you can um, look at the screen,
An
and
answer, yeah.
use that as the answer. Disregard the productivity improvement that's listed there as a question in the actual pop-up. So the question we're answering with a short answer is who's involved with product design for software development?
Almost everyone.
Yeah. Who's not?
Awesome.
It might be a shorter list at times.
Yeah.
So we've got about 10% of the folks have answered. Again, if you look around for, there should be a pop-up window somewhere with a chance to type in a quick answer as a short one-word deal or a couple of words about who's involved with product design for software development, and you better answer product manager at some point.
Cool.
All right, so we've got about
I
50.
think we're good. I think it's, I mean, some sort of people have responded and it seems like pretty involved.
All right.
Okay, so I will close this to proceed in the interest of time. Okay, so I put together a more or less comprehensive view of when we talk about software lifecycle. Obviously, the ideation is very important, prototyping and development, and and there's quite a few examples at each stage of the software development where AI can really make impact, and what kind of AI, what are some of the tools out there, and on the planning, the average project would save when we go into market analysis, when you go into the discovery and research for the product that you're doing in market analysis, there's 60% faster market analysis that AI can provide. And there's quite a few tools, Claude and OpenAI, ChatGPT that I sometimes use. But also, if you start deploying your own foundation models, there's also sometimes very good foundation models within that are not very public that you can use for specific market research that are trained on specific market data. For user research, that is very important. Dovetail AI, user testing AI is very important, has been used. The average benchmark is about 40% more insights that you get from user behavior patterns, automated survey analysis, and sentiment analysis that AI can help. Product planning and product planning, which is still in the kind of initial stages of the kind of product design. One of the tools that I use, Miro and FigJam, very good products. And you might have used, and as you go into DevOps, there's a whole range of products that's out there. Prototyping, I'm not going to go through all of it, but as we go through this list, prototyping is something that can really benefit from AI. Figma is one of the products that I use heavily, and really great insights that it provides. And Sketch AI is another product that I use. So I think this is as we go, and there's a whole list of tools and kind of market data that I could collect that would benefit from generative AI during the whole life cycle of the project. But as we go into few very specific areas where I talk about, like for instance, UX, user experience design with Gen AI, really that personalization of the application with AI becomes important to analyze the frequency of the usage of the product and how the user interface can adapt to the user's needs. That automatic adaptation of the product. Assessment for time of the app and bounce rates. These are areas that also Gen AI is already helping. And one of the things that real-time data, UX designers can really leverage Gen AI to deliver immediate and personalized information through location behavior of the users. And that all of that goes into this hyper-personalization of software and user interfaces. I mentioned the Q for developer, but that's something, the tool that I use heavily, and this goes into the next step of the area where Gen AI is making huge impact. That's on the coding side, rapid innovation, accelerating time to market, and with much higher agility that you can start developing and significantly reduce the cost of development. I think it was Andy Jassy mentioned with Gen AI, Amazon already has saved 4,500 developer years using generative AI in the design, which is a very impressive number. That goes into all cycles of the software development. And all of that is leveraging Amazon Q Developer. And there's a lot of opportunities, obviously, there to create new experiences, boost productivity, and really deliver insights. As these are all the things that every application that you go, just the consumers, that's what they expect to have. And if that's not there, they typically that product most likely will not be successful in the market. As we go into rapid prototyping, there are some products that I use myself, but also heavily in terms of cost savings and faster cycles of rapid prototyping as you go into product design. UiZard is something that I use visually, so it really helps. I've not used DALL-E for rapid prototyping and design of the kind of software, but there's definitely ways. It seems like there are suggestions out there. In an in-person meeting, I would definitely ask who's used one of these, but it's just more complex right now to raise someone's hand. I think that's so we're approaching one of the areas that I wanted to talk a little bit about, this digital twins, and digital twins is definitely one area where can really benefit from AI, and in the past was really developing a digital twin product would take a long time in these specific skills. But generative AI is really changing that, where you can leverage some of the existing platforms, past platforms, and easily test what you want to build before you actually start building it. And that cognitive twin that you can create from either the physical product or software product. And some of the trends that are happening right now in software design that I wanted to share, AI augmented design environments. It's also heavily using generative AI. This is when we talk about AI augmented, fully integrated AI, the generative AI design platform. When we talk about expected growth in design tools for this specific market, we're talking about massive growth in the market. So if there's anyone is planning to invest, that's definitely one of the areas to go into investment. Enhanced natural language interfaces is one of the things. One of the things that interests me a lot is that hyper-personalized products, where AI models is dynamically tailoring the product. This is very powerful, and consumers, they will have that expectation in the future to ask the application what they like to see, and the application can provide them the experience in real time. And democratization of product design has already been happening, but it's accelerating. That low-code, no-code platforms that really provides everyone can develop an application if they have the minimum level of requirements. And these are some of the trends, and all of them are really heavily impacted by Gen AI. Do we still have time, Tom? I just wanted to go through.
Yeah, we should be okay.
Okay, very good. So digital twins, I really like this topic, and I'm really personally going in this direction more and more, just because of the high market potentials. Heavily, especially as we go with, I said I'm not going to talk about hardware product design, but it's definitely one area that's using generative AI in many areas. There's some very good big companies that are out there pushing this, and it's creating that cognitive twin or digital twin of a physical product that otherwise would take a lot of time to actually build. And industries like automotive manufacturing is heavily using it, and there's quite a few energy industries heavily using digital twins. And the goal for that is really get that faster time to market and lower production defects that companies, they go and invest, but really definitely pays back in time. It would take a long time, but I just wanted to have very high level overview of the components that goes into the digital twin, from spatial kind of a contextualization of the product, to real world data, to modeling and the simulation. And I brought a few candidates of the products that are out there that actually helps with several of these domains. NVIDIA Omniverse, I don't know if you've used it. It's a very great platform, and really helps with creating 3D workflows and applications, actually with much faster way of doing it. You can create Omniverse workstations. There's a whole world that you can actually explore as we go into NVIDIA. If you have tried NVIDIA, if not tried, definitely I recommend if you're interested in digital twin. Another company that's so before we go market, for digital twins using generative AI currently is roughly about maybe just over 10 billion, but it's expected to reach 110 billion. So there's definitely a lot of investment that's going into this. And one of the companies that are out there and they provide very good low-code applications for digital twins, that's Mendix. And I've heard very good reviews about it. I haven't tried that myself, but there's definitely very good content out there on this specific product. And ANSYS in terms of simulation partnership and type of generative AI that they use for creating that experience. And I think maybe for this interest of time, I'm at the 45 minutes timeline, Tom, and just wanted to thank everyone. Hopefully this was informative and provided some context. It's just the field is so broad, and definitely stay in touch. And if need be, we can have follow-up conversation on specific topics that you would be interested.
We do have a number of questions coming in from the audience. A few of them have come in via the chat window, so I'll
Okay,
select a couple here since I know it's difficult to present and read the chat window as it's scrolling past. Um, we had a comment from someone saying that they've used Gen AI to improve productivity and do design storytelling, product design storytelling, to develop an MVP website. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Someone else launched a product with LLM as an
Mm-hmm.
integrated component. Other folks are using AI to expand product ideas. Check out Chat PRD, refining product details, descriptive details, spending a lot of time verifying things and kind of noodling through. Uh, Another comment about the well-designed slides, and I would echo that for sure. Um, One question we did get
Mm-hmm.
was wondering if you had a perspective on intellectual property rights for products. If you are leveraging AI to design or come up with product ideas, what's the effect of that from an intellectual property standpoint, as well as possible concerns with intellectual property in general with Gen AI products?
Yeah. Just before I answer that, I wanted to go back to the website design. So one of my friends was planning to design a website with Figma. We use that there's an AI agent that you can actually say what kind of website you want to create and give it some context. It actually created the entire website, and we extracted it in HTML format and we deployed it on Amazon S3 within like 15 minutes, and it was almost a finished product. Creates images as like that time to value that we were talking about. There's definitely out there, and there's several products. As I want to mention Figma, but there's quite a few products out there. Intellectual property. So that goes back into those considerations that I was mentioning. Ethics. I didn't go that deep into the responsible AI dimensions. There's the whole responsible AI aspects that goes into it, and all AI providers are doing that right now, which is important. If you use generative AI for intellectual property, I mean, it goes into if that intellectual property has been patented or not, and there's obviously patent protection on these things, but if it isn't, it isn't, right? You're talking about if an idea is trademarked or is somehow protected, they're protected, but if they're not, they belong to the community. So that's one of the reasons that in the beginning I mentioned that rapid expansion of patenting that has started with AI, just because to protect the intellectual property more and more. It's more important today than it was 3 years ago because not everyone had access to these ideas. But now, when Gen AI started, when OpenAI released ChatGPT, there was one entrepreneur in Spain that started a retail business, just everything from scratch with ChatGPT, just telling him what to do. He was actually unemployed, and he was able to build a multi-million-dollar business, a multi-million-euro business, just listening to what AI says, right? So there's a lot of that. Obviously, protecting right becomes very, very important. So I have myself 2 patents pending right now for considerations, just because I want to protect what I do, and I recommend everyone do the same thing. But if it isn't, there's obviously it's open playground for everyone.
One side note, if people have recommendations on Gen AI tools that they're using in product management that they want to give a shout out to, feel free to paste that in the chat
Mhm.
for everyone's benefit. One of the benefits of having a big community of product managers, we can all help each other out. So if you're thrilled with something, David, you mentioned a number of interesting tools, and I've frantically scribbled down a number of these on post-it notes to check out later. But if folks have other ones to share, feel free to add that to the chat window. I know Liz, or Teresa, you have your hand up, so we can take a live question from Teresa.
Okay, let's go ahead and take the slide down if everybody's captured that so we can see each other, all see each other. If
There we go.
so,
Very good.
David, this relates to that question you just answered, but I mean, I guess some companies can afford to build their own models, learning models,
Mhm.
and therefore have proprietary information. But for smaller companies and individuals and sole proprietors, as soon as you put your information in Chat GPT or whatever,
Mhm.
what have you, it becomes part of the learning repository. How do you uh, protect your information? Are there ways to be able to use these tools without giving up ownership of what you put into it?
Yeah, very, very good question, very good comment. So, the answer is unfortunately no. So, the moment, as you said, if you use any of the public-facing AI agents that are out there, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, like I use so many of them just to test things out. Most corporations they have good essentially protection for their data that employees cannot actually access some of these sites, and if they can access, they shouldn't upload anything. But I remember I was actually on a customer site, and there was one of the employees there was sitting there and had a spreadsheet of internal revenue data, and he wanted to summarize this, and he just uploaded everything to ChatGPT so it was too late, but I was then I actually started explaining him, when you upload that, that's not yours anymore. That belongs to OpenAI, and it goes into public information about your company. So very important for companies to have guardrails and guidelines around how to use these public facing ones, and never share your personal data or any data that's supposed to be confidential. um, to create your own AI agents, to be honest, I mean, there is sometimes cost associated, but if you want to use, for instance, ChatGPT, if you the basic kind of membership doesn't actually give you that much. You can have a few prompts a day, and it's on. So you have to get that pro membership, which is already you're paying something per month. For the same amount of money that most people pay, you can have your own LLM running in Amazon Bedrock. That actually is your own private one at that point. That
Hmm.
provides. So I it's not as easy. I understand that it needs some developer experience, but it's much easier and safer to actually create and deploy your own LLM, and it becomes your private. And when you shut it down, it's shut down, and you don't have to use it anymore. And also, you use it only when you're using it, right? You actually pay for it's pay as you go model. So I think there's quite a few solutions out there on Google, on Microsoft, on AWS that you could somehow come into it. But my recommendation: never share any corporate or private data on open AI agents.
Mhm. Okay.
I would second that as a security person who's involved with a lot of privacy
Yeah,
violations and data breaches. I've already been involved with a couple of people that have been, after investigations have been dismissed for policy violations because they
yeah.
took either healthcare data or private finance information and sent it out to the public uh, uh, LLMs out there as opposed to using an internal corporate resource as you recommend.
I'm going to guess from the polls that this is not an overly simplistic question, but on what you just described in having your own LLM, what does that LLM get trained on? Then, if you don't have information to feed into it,
Yeah.
where's that coming from? is that available to use from somewhere else?
Yeah, so to create so if you remember from the picture that I showed you, the foundation model is the bigger picture, and LLM is a subset of that, where actually the foundation model has been trained on a specific task like text or create an image or something else. So the foundation model, to train a foundation model, that's a cost that not average people cannot afford. Even average companies cannot afford, because that's in that stack that I was showing you. You actually have to go at the bottom layer, deploy your own AI chips, and start training and have your own machine learning processes and operations. And that's a very expensive operations to run. I mean, I've done it myself, but because most of the things that I do, I've actually don't pay for the infrastructure cost. But for companies to do this, some companies are doing it. Banks are doing it a lot. I know I have some banking customers that they create their own LLMs because they have long-term strategy and plan for adopting AI, which makes sense. But those LLMs are trained on a wide range of data, and there is bias, there is hallucination, there's definitely areas where you need to take into account how much. Right now, I think some of the big companies are competing against each other on the AI market. And when I go, one of the things that I do, I test different things. I try to find, that's something you can do actually, try to find products of another company from the other company's AI model, and you will see bias. I have seen that myself. So creating your own foundation models, I would say that's not an option for most people and most companies. But taking that foundation model and taking the next step and fine tuning it and that doesn't cost that much.
And where does that training information? So yeah, that training information starts with the foundation model feeding the LLM, and then what, you're inputting other stuff then to further train the model, your own information.
It can be as simple as so again, and I have to go back to AWS stack, because let's say the simple storage service is just a storage service on AWS that you can upload objects. Could be PDF documents, could be PowerPoint, could be anything. So once you have uploaded all your in that central storage, any data that you think is valid to you, or you have provided a source of reference for that foundation model, either it's online, sometimes you have access to a large database of a library. That's another way to do it. And the connection between your foundation model to that source of data is actually fairly simple. You can actually literally tell it that's where it is, and it's very fast in crunching data and absorbing the content and using that as now fine-tuned in specific task.
Okay.
So one of the things that I was doing for my friend the other day, they're interested in history, and there's so many books written in history in different languages, and can actually absorb all the languages. This is very impressive. And if you ask one person to learn all those topics in multiple languages, it's impossible. But the AI can read all those books and provide you answer to specific questions in one language.
Hi, this is Chandru. I had a question on, you had a slide that talks about trading off speed, cost, and accuracy in selecting LLMs from model gardens or a specific application. How do you end up making the choice? How do you know which LLM is going to perform and give a certain level of either cost or accuracy or speed? And for a specific summarization, for example, maybe financial data, that's something that you use as an example. Can you talk about how do you actually identify that?
Yeah, good question. So depending on the provider that you use, those metrics should be provided to you. So when you go into the model garden or playground from AWS, there is definitely that data. So the cost is associated, cost is there. And depending on what kind of task you want that foundation model to do, you would there is metrics that they can provide for you. This is what is done previously, and now you, as the essentially now developer, you can take the next step. You can say, okay, this is closer to what I want. Now I want to take this to the next step in terms of. But if you want an LLM that has very high precision and has very high speed, that typically means that it's going to be very expensive to buy. And most the general knowledge of Gen AI, we're talking about ChatGPT, and mostly people use ChatGPT and some of the other ones. But once you go into GCP's Vertex or Amazon Bedrock and you see the playground there's so many large language models out there that actually most people have not heard, and they do such a good job. Teresa's asking if I use AI to my. So I use AI for the images that I showed you, and definitely. So sometimes for market research, for me, it's fast. I have access to some analyst kind of sites, but it's just to get some idea before I go there. It really helps. Yeah, I use AI almost all the time, but I use my own AI. I don't use public facing one.
Key differentiator. Anybody else have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand if you, Jim Shibler, you have a question.
Oh, I wanted to share something. For a discussion group, I had a case, hypothetical case where developers were agonizing about whether or not to adopt AI for code development. And there were 4 questions that came up. I just put them in the chat now. 4 concerns they had. One was the black box nature of the AI, because there's no way to tell how it's arriving at its decisions. Variability of output, because you ask it the same question, and as the AI evolves, you can get different output over time as the AI evolves. The developers can become overly reliant on the tools, become less skillful. And then the 4th concern, the risk of leaking proprietary info as the developers are trying to guide the AI. So those are the 4 things. We had some fascinating discussions. I'd be interested in your thoughts on it.
Yeah, you're telling the truth. So it's a very good concern. So there is one component of AI is called explainable AI, and not all foundation models they do it, but some foundation models are trained to be explainable, and that explainability goes back into exactly that. How if you're AI model and you're telling me that you've made a decision, how did you do it? You have to explain how you did it. So most common foundation models, they are explainable right now. So when they give you a recommendation, you can ask them why. So that explainability comes with it. So like for coding, I use Amazon Q Developer, and that definitely has that explainability component.
Cool.
That when you're asking to rewrite this piece for you, it's going to tell you why and how it came to that conclusion. So definitely look for that explainable AI component.
Good to know.
But the AI can generate different output over time as the AI evolves. Absolutely, yeah. So and that's not a threat, I would say. I would say the fact that AI can generate different things, that goes into creativity, and I find that as a positive. You know, if you have a developer that, you know, I've been a developer in the past as well. When you're writing things, when you're writing code, everybody writes their own style, and you have your own style, and you have developed over the years depending on what type of coding that you've done. I was never great at it, to be honest, but I can find my way. And I think it's limited. You know, I feel like you get limited into solving a problem through lines of code, whereas AI can do many things, can come up with the right multiple solutions to one. So I find that as a positive, to be honest. Developers may become, and that's absolutely true. So the developers are already reliant, and it's going to happen. I don't think there's a way out of it. You know, like if you look at like GitHub Copilot, if you use GitHub, there's just everybody's using it right now. I don't know personally, I don't know any developer that's not using Gen AI anymore for coding. Like building something from scratch, it just takes so. And if you think about it, this has already been happening. All the foundation models that we use, that they are trained on GitHub and other coding platforms. If you're a developer and you want to start coding something, it's very, very rare, even without AI, that you start from scratch. You go to GitHub, you find a sample code that somebody already has written. It's already 50% there. You take it and you make some changes. Everyone's doing it the same thing. So that reliability, that already happened. And it goes into really speed that developers are expected to do. You know, an average developer has maybe from a few hours to maybe a day or two to solve a problem, just because the cost of development and everything, the pressure that's coming on them. So they have come up with creative ways to be more productive, and that dependence that they've had on other people's work now is going to be shifted more to AI that would provide them with more, I would say, more creative ways to solve the problem. Risk of leaking proprietary company information, there's definitely that, yeah. So, and that's why I said, that there's this sovereign AI component that companies deploy and use their own AI. So you own that environment that you use. So when when your developers are using your AI and training the AI how to code, that stays within the company. It doesn't leave the network essentially of your company. Although if it's in the cloud, it's always in the cloud, but it's still within the network and that doesn't leak to the outside world. So I don't recommend GitHub Copilot on any company or enterprise developer because that's a public topic.
Yeah.
Unless you have a specific contract with GitHub, and I don't know how that works. But I know if you go and like Q developer, I know it really well, but I know that if you deploy Q developer in your own cloud environment, the content of that will always remain part of the company's proprietary information.
Behind your own firewall.
Absolutely. Behind the
So
firewall.
those were the technical ones. There were also a couple of humanistic ones. The inflated expectations of stakeholders who think that code is now automatically developed, fear of job losses, all those kinds of things. If you're interested in what the group came up with after discussing these, the general conclusions are, well, we can't not adopt this. We got to go this direction. Otherwise, we're going to become obsolete. However, we need to come up with guidelines and answers around these sorts of concerns and make sure that we're addressing these things as we move forward. But let's pilot some on a small scale, learn some stuff before we expand it out to do everything with it and so forth. So anyway, that was the general conclusion and approach.
There's definitely some misunderstanding on what Gen AI can do today. There is that, some people, as I said, I started with the hype. Some people say, oh, it's just a hype. Some people think, oh, it can do everything. The reality is that it's neither of those. There is some capabilities that we can offload to a generative AI model that helps us to accelerate in development. I personally don't think anyone will be out of job. The only people will be out of job are the ones who don't want to adopt this. I think the expectation, I was reading the news sometime last week, the number of jobs that's expected to be created actually using AI is in the millions. And so as we go, now more and more companies are being born because starting a company has become so easy. So that's one of the things that most big companies are very scared of is talent retention. Because if you are an entrepreneur, if you have good ideas, if you have the means and tools to do it, you might as well go start your own shop at this point, right? That's what one of the areas that now people are capable of creating content. So I think the future of economy will be in the interest of smaller companies.
Leveling out the playing field.
Yeah, that democratization of technology, which is happening.
Just a quick comment. I see an analogy with the port longshoreman strikes and such. They're saying one of our terms is no automation. It's like, well, if you don't automate, the other ports do, you're going to be out of a job anyway. So you can't fight this thing. How do you figure out how to take advantage of it and work with it rather than trying to wall it off?
Well said, Jim. I want to grab folks. Just a few people dropping off, and I want to give a
one last thing before
parting thoughts.
We talked about the job loss and all the stuff. Many companies are providing free AI lessons, and many companies, Amazon through Skill Builder is doing is free for public. NVIDIA is doing it. Microsoft is doing it. There's a lot of platforms today that people can just go and learn at really no cost, just to sharpen up the skills. So there's definitely trying, and I think this is going to get more and more where no cost learning will come into to help elevate the level of AI fluency at the national level.
And very much welcome at this point. So, so with that, I'd like to thank you, David, for informative presentation and very engaging content and nicely organized slides. Always like to see good design at work, whether it's slides or product. I'd like to just virtual round of applause for people. I don't know if you can hit the emoji button, but definitely a virtual round of applause all the way around. We will, if if folks are members, you will have access to the recording on YouTube. And speaking of which, I want to toss to Teresa to mention just a little bit about our membership. Oh, you're on mute, Teresa. Sorry.
David, first, I want to echo what Tom said. I think everybody agrees, this has just been a fantastic presentation. So informative. And it's, all of us have had exposure to AI, but we all vary in how much exposure we've had. And every little bit adds to our base of knowledge. And we need it in order to be ready for the future. So thank you so very much for this.
Thank you.